Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, Cobaine Ivory is here with me, and I'm very excited to talk to him because we're going to talk about making sounds and sample packs, loops, stuff I'm definitely very into. You may have noticed. He's a Grammy-nominated producer. He's got a lot of really cool music on his website that I was enjoying, and I was especially enjoying the vibe, the sound selection and the textures, and he's a multi-instrumentalist too, so he really appreciates that human feel, and the groove and stuff was really apparent in his music. I think we're going to have a great conversation. Welcome to the show, Mr. Cobaine Ivory. Good to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Brian. Appreciate it. Long-time listener, so now I'm talking to you.
It's so great to hear, man. I really do appreciate that. It's nice to know that, like when I see your stuff, like I had a connection to it. I was like, oh yeah, this guy's, he's got this like same kind of vision, for his sounds that I do. And so I could just kind of sense the values in what you do kind of overlapping with some of the stuff I do. So it's cool to hear that.
Wow, you're actually starting with gems already. Yeah. I mean, you're really clued in if you can hear what I'm doing and see what I'm about, because there is definitely a link.
Yeah, because, there is no shortage of samples and loop packs and instruments you can get. And even if you don't get anything, you just download the software and it's loaded with it.
Yeah.
And I know you're an Ableton Live user, and I think Ableton is actually really good about having samples and stuff preloaded that are pretty nice,
Yeah.
There's a lot of taste in what they do. So it's, you don't ever have to get anything else, is what I'm saying.
Right.
But, I can understand what you're filling in a nice spot for people, that are looking for something to take their sound to like a different level, something a little more personal, maybe their own style.
Absolutely. It's like more of a middle ground where if you sample from an actual record, it's going to take a while and cost a lot of money to clear. And if you try to make it yourself without the techniques, it's probably not going to sound as real. I'm right in between. I play everything myself, so I don't have musicians playing my stuff for me. Eventually, I want to get to that level. But yeah, I think once you have that middle ground of an actual sample that I've created, you get my style, you get my sensibilities, you get my taste, and you get some dope records, hopefully.
Yeah, that's cool. So you play all the stuff. That's all you.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're playing all kinds of instruments then.
Yeah, I guess, my story for instrumentation is I used to be working with this guy named Out of Sight. Right now he's like a platinum artist, but at the time he delivered food. And I met him on Craigslist and we started working. And yeah, we started working with a band. And he said, dude, I need you to come in and play some instruments. And so the only instrument available was piano. So I didn't know anything. I didn't know any theory. So I bought this book called Theory and Harmony and just read through it, got the basics of theory. And I guess learning piano and theory kind of go hand in hand. But once you kind of get theory, you can do everything else. So you apply the theory to guitar and bass and drums, obviously. So I started doing that. And then I just felt like when I was sampling other people's work, I was stealing. So I said, hey, I play all these instruments. Why don't I try it myself? And the first sample I made, I was like, yeah, okay, this is something I think is really cool. I think around that time I was just learning trumpet, which I don't remember how to play anymore. But yeah, just utilizing all those elements and creating like sonics. I love it. I make probably 2, maybe 3 samples a week just for me. Everything is made for me first and then shipped out to some of the people I work with.
I kind of do the same sort of thing. I've found that if I just sort of follow my own curiosities, I'll usually come up with something that I like and that hopefully other people like. But I have done a couple in the past where I was like, oh, like I did one like for dubstep when dubstep was a thing. I didn't even listen to dubstep. And I'm like trying to make these sounds. And it was just kind of like going through the work of it it was fun and
Yeah.
educational to learn about that. And I picked up a lot on synthesis actually, but
Mm.
it was, I knew like I kind of wasn't ever going to use these sounds myself. So
Wow.
there's much less love in that, you know, when you're doing it for like the job or just to create content. And I'm
Mm.
glad I did it because it taught me that, where it's like, you know, the fun for me isn't just making a pack for the sake of making a pack. It
Right.
was exploring, like finding out where is this going to take me.
Right. What you didn't see the use of, like, what I always say is, like, if you're making a beat or something and it doesn't sound good, just take the drums out and bounce everything that you have and utilize that stuff as a sample.
Mm,
Because sometimes when you like kind of chop up an arrangement that you didn't like initially, it turns into something even cooler. So
right.
that's something I usually suggest to people. So even, the EDM sample packs that you made, there might be something different if you just reorder an arrangement.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good way too to kind of relieve some of the guilt of all those like unfinished ideas.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can sort of go back and there's probably something in there that you liked at first, at least if you saved it. So
Yeah.
you might at least be able to maybe repurpose the drum beat. And live makes it so easy. You can just drag the clip into the browser or drag the whole
Exactly.
track and then just when you need something, go back to it. A lot of times I've forgotten what it was originally and
Oh,
you just do something totally different with it.
right. It's like you said you forgot what it was. It's like when you record a voice note and when the idea is right there with you and you're recording, you're like, oh man, it's going to be amazing. And you go back to it and it's just like, "Brr, brr, 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 brr," and you're like, what? I don't know what was this bass? Was this guitar? I don't know what any of this was. And it just goes in the pile of, unfinished voice notes, not even
Hmm.
unfinished music, unfinished voice
Right.
notes.
I
Yeah.
definitely have a lot of them where I'm just like singing something and like you said, you think you have a great idea, then you listen back to it and it's like, I can't even tell like what key I'm in. like,
Right. Oh my God.
like the idea is totally gone.
Yeah. 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 Agreed.
It's a great way though. I mean, I've definitely salvaged a ton of ideas when I can't actually get to record or write it down or whatever to just, blabber into the phone a little bit.
Right. And then like even if you're taking those unfinished beats and utilize them as samples, you can just morph them. You can mess them up. You can
Hmm.
a lot of my friends who also make samples, they're starting to use pedals. That's like the new thing now. And you could just take that, put in a looper or put in sampler, simpler, and then just run it through chains, run it into pedals, run it back out and just play with it. I mean, I'm learning nowadays to not treat a guitar as a guitar and a bass as a bass. Just treat everything as sound, and so just manipulate it. I learned that from a really good trap producer. Strangely
Mm.
enough, I played something for him. We were collaborating, and he's like, "Cool," and he just messed it up. It didn't sound anything like a guitar. I'm like, "Wait, it's a guitar." And no, it sounded like sound eventually,
Mm.
and it sounded really cool. So
Yeah, like don't worry about that. We're
yeah,
making it into something else.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's often, what I think a lot about this idea of like, you hear like a certain song and 2 seconds into it, you know what it is. It's like a certain
Mhm.
sound. I did a podcast actually where that was the theme. I was a guest and the theme was to just talk about songs you can identify immediately.
Right.
And ever since then, I've really considered that a lot because, you know, if you're recording your guitar, really, there is a wide range of tones and sound you can get,
Hmm.
but it is still a guitar. It's
Yes.
still, and sometimes, um, it can just kind of blend into the crowd. But when you do things like that, you can really do stuff that no one's ever heard before.
Truly, truly, you can. And now you're getting into Yeezus territory, which is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
do a Berkeley class online. It's sampling, Ableton Live techniques sampling, I think is the official title.
okay.
And one of the first things I always say is when I first heard about sampling and I was first getting into making music, to me, sampling was like what P. Diddy did with the Police song, where you
Hmm.
take the track and you sing over it, rap over it, or like maybe like the Beastie Boys sampling Led Zeppelin or something like that. But
Right.
but now, like you said, everything is a sample.
Yeah.
Everything is a sample, like because that kind of mindset is like, yeah, I recorded this guitar a certain way, but now I can time stretch it. I can pitch it down. I can reverse it and chop it up. When I
Yeah.
think of it more as just a guitar performance, I guess that was the feeling you had when you're like, hey, this is a guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Don't change it. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, Prince said that. Prince said,
Hmm.
soon we're going to be sampling the samples that were originally a sample. So, and that's definitely happening now. You hear old Biggie songs that are now repurposed with an R&B or a trap rapper, same beat, maybe trap drums, but Biggie's producers initially sampled some other type of work, and then that work was even some people will say that like we talk about plugins and we talk about cheat codes and stuff like that, but an actual piano is a plugin. If you're using that piano for everything, it's going to have its own sound. If you buy a different piano, it's another sound. So
Hmm.
yeah, everything is just sound. If you just kind of like spread that kind of bland butter over everything, it actually opens you up. It can make some people afraid, but if you just say, "Hey, I'm just gonna make sounds today,"
Hmm.
you get more excited about it.
Yeah. And to that point about the Prince quote there, I teach high school kids music production. And I've had it on a couple occasions where they bring in a song. There was like a Kanye song at one point. Some kid brought it. It's like, I want to sample this. I'm like, you know, this is actually a sample itself.
Yeah,
He had that
yeah,
same idea as you, but now you're doing it. It's like this other layer. It's kind of cool to see that happen.
yeah.
That particular kid had no idea that that was something that came from somewhere else.
Right. No, I mean, yeah. When I started making beats, it was like DJ Premier, and I I was doing it on my own. I couldn't even tell you what I had, a Casio something, and some kind of gray drum machine, like they didn't even have color yet or something. I don't know, but
It's in black and
yeah,
white.
yeah, and I was doing like pause tape as they call them,
Mm.
recording tape, and then having another tape to record that tape. So it was just like poor man's multi-tracking, and since I didn't play anything, I just was like, let me utilize these old CDs that my stepdad has or whatever my mom has, and try to make them work. And then hearing DJ Premier, I was like, oh, he's doing that. Like I was producing before I knew what production was.
Mm.
So I mean, even Rick Rubin, who plays instruments, that when he was working with the Beastie Boys, he sampled obviously Led Zeppelin. He sampled a lot of records. So it's something that will never die. It's something that will constantly be involved in music. But people making their own samples, this is kind of relatively new territory.
Mm. Yeah, I got kind of a start recording things on a karaoke machine, doing exactly what you said. There's just some
Mm,
like, you know, household toy a friend of mine had, and we realized we could play the tape and record that and the microphone at the same time onto the tape, and it was just like, oh my god, it's like we're two parts, and it started with me just playing chords so I could practice like soloing pentatonic guitar scales,
right,
you
right, right.
know.
Yeah, yeah,
But soon it was like, hey, let's try this, let's try that. And you start getting curious or bored with what you were originally doing.
yeah. Did you
Mm.
find any of your old stuff?
Did I do what?
Do you still have your old stuff? Did you like go
I
through it
have
and
I have these tapes that me and my friends made when we were like in fourth grade. Cassette tapes of us mostly just screaming and yelling on these things. I don't think they're ever going to go public.
right? Yeah, yeah. They shouldn't. None of
but
them.
but what is interesting is that was before I ever picked up a guitar. Any of us ever played an instrument, but we all had that interest where we were
Yeah.
playing with sound and fooling around, mostly for a laugh. But behind it, at the heart, was this like kind of creative spirit that we wanted to make
Mm-hmm.
these little things. And it was kind of funny as I started playing guitar later on, which that was like ninth grade for me.
Mm-hmm.
I started to see like, oh, I used to like doing this. You know, I didn't consider myself a musician, but
Right, right.
yeah.
There's something about that. First of all, yeah, I found my old stuff. I one day I just went through. I have millions of cassette tapes. I just went through them all and just discovered music that I was listening to back then and just found it in MP3 format. But that's one side. But the other thing is like, yeah, it's. I talk to a lot of creatives all the time about like their why they're doing this because we get so lost and once you start making money, once you set a bar, that bar is now like that's your standard. And we get lost from why we started in the first place. And what you just said is incredibly important. I always tell people, why did you start? Why did you do it? Because it was fun. So even in my schedule, I don't make beats. I actually, put aside time to create. I don't make beats or, do this or do that. It just says play. And it's just important to look at it that way. A friend of mine, he did this seminar with a whole bunch of adults called Play, and kind of his speech before it, he said that kids, when they make up rules for a game, the rules change as they go and they meander, but no one says, "Hey, we said that such and such." I mean, they might, but rarely do they. They just kind of go with the flow. And that's like kind of that's the essence of creativity, is just kind of going with the flow. And what happens to us mostly is our ego. We set rules of who we are as a producer or as a songwriter, as an artist, and we start making something and say, "Hey, these are my rules that I set for myself. Now I'm doing something different," instead of just going with the flow. So I can go crazy about talking about that, but like, every time someone gets caught up in the money and deals and what have you, or they're not connecting to the music anymore, which is the biggest thing I hear, I say, go back to why you did it as a kid. You weren't getting paid as a kid. You were enjoying your time as a kid, and just create and have fun. Just play. And I know a lot of us, we sit down at our desk and we do everything not to turn this computer on. We just, let me watch Netflix for a second. Let me reorganize. Let me fold. Let me, doing laundry, whatever you're doing. Let me do that first. And sometimes, I heard you say in another podcast, and I totally agreed. Like, one of the rules is just do something for 5 minutes. Just do something for 5 minutes, because it never turns into 5 minutes. And it works against you if you say, I'm just going to watch this Netflix series for 5 minutes. It's never 5 minutes. It's
5 episodes.
An hour and it's 5 episodes. Yeah. So I remember you saying that, and I'm like, yeah, that's so key. I learned that recently. I just say, I'll just make some drums, 5 minutes, and then you just get lost if you allow yourself.
Yeah, it's called play music, right? It's play music. And isn't that
Exactly.
absurd? The way you're explaining it like made something click in my head here, where when you're a kid, you leave all of that stuff undone. Your room is a mess, your toys are everywhere or whatever. You didn't do your chores and your homework, but you run to do that thing. And now as an adult, it's like, I gotta wash the dishes and I make sure my laundry's full. Like, I find every excuse not to do it because it's
exactly.
And I think it's fear, actually.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I've kind of come to terms with that, but like, you're being like a chicken or something, and when I was a kid too, I was never thinking anyone was going to hear this stuff. I wasn't sharing it on social media, but even now, every time I play music, it gets recorded pretty much, which is awesome. Not complaining. I'm really glad.
Yeah.
But it's always documented, and then maybe it'll get posted. Maybe this will be something I can use for something, professionally. And sometimes that really zaps the play out of it. Where I've been in that play mode, and then I realize I have something I like, and now I better get serious about it now. And then now I'm not there. I can't continue on this path because I've left. I'm not playing anymore. Now I'm like an adult watching a kid paint and say, well, you're a pretty good painter. You're going to paint for 12 hours a day. And, Or like you love playing baseball, huh? Well, let's get you on the teams and get you a private coach and just kind of, suck the fun out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the journey. That's why a lot of, what do they call them? People that specialize, like child prodigies. That's what I was looking at. That's why a lot of child prodigies, you don't hear about them because adult comes in and says, this is the right way to do it. You're gifted with this, but I'm going to steer you. It's like that meme that has gone around for years of a teacher who is basically a log with no branches, and you see the kids and they have like branches and uniqueness about them, and the teacher has an axe and is cutting off the little branches to make the kids just like the adult. I mean, that's what it is. It's the rules we set. It's ego. It's fear. I'm writing a book on this. It's far from done, but it's called Greatness: Circumvention of Self. But it's the concept of my journey when I was making money and like doing a lot of demos for people, and then I got back into play, and it was going backwards. It wasn't going forwards. A lot of people try to push through and go forwards into greatness. You just gotta like actually let go of a lot of things. And I just kind of shut my blinds and Rolling Stone has like the top 500 songs of all time. I went through every single one, and I've done a lot of travel in my life. I was in Spain once and met this guy who found out I was a producer and played me some stuff. And I'm like, where are you getting these samples? And he's like, oh, this is Ethiopian trip hop. And I'm like, what? I was like, give me all of your music. And he gave me 30 gigs. And I went through that in 3 months. And I just identified with the things that gave me chills and goosebumps. That's the indicator for me. So, yeah, part of this book that I'm writing, there's going to be some cards that come with the book that are strategies to get over what happens to us when we're about to create art and what gets in our way. And one of the strategies is I have a folder full of things that bring me joy and give me chills, and they're just for me. So sunsets, dogs playing, certain singers just really, getting into that vibe and getting to flow. But it's only that things that I've identified that give me chills. So that's one of my strategies. So if I start feeling creeping in, I just watch a couple of videos, I get chills, and I'm like, let's go. And I go from that moment on and just create. That's what it is. We're just in our own way, and we have all these rules that have been, our self-talk is our parents. It's our parents trying to keep us safe from the next step we're going to make. So, going to the next step, elevating, being successful takes courage, and you might get hurt. So your self-talk is your parents preventing you from getting hurt by telling you things so you don't try it. So the best way to deal with your self-talk is to talk to your parents, and then you can talk to your self-talk, which is another strategy. Like literally when you start hearing it, oh, I'm trash, I made stuff like this before, you can say to your self-talk, I don't need that. Can you tell me something that helps me? And when I tell you right off the bat, it starts talking to you and says, you should do this. Maybe you should go at it this way. I had an event. I don't know. I think I was talking somewhere and I was like, oh, I forgot to mention this. I'm so da-da-da-da. And then I talked to the self-talk, and it gave me, I brought out a notebook. I was like, oh my God, it's giving me so much good advice. So again, I can talk about this stuff for ages because on every level that I've met, there's something we always block ourselves. It's just us. The talent is there. It's just us blocking ourselves from moving forward. And there's artists in the past where I'm like super talented. Nope, I don't want to do it because they're in their own way. And then there's some that they're in their own wayness makes them kind of cool. But I'm walking into that saying, oh, I know I'm going to have to deal with this. I know I'm going to hit them up and they're not going to come to the studio. I know this, I know that. But yeah, it's just, we're always, the last battle of every artist is themselves.
Yeah, right. It's like someone whispering in your ear all day long. And you gotta, if it was like a person telling you like, you suck, man, you're terrible, you wouldn't hang out with that person anymore.
No.
And a lot of that stuff is stuff you would never say to your worst enemy.
Right.
It can be really damaging.
Yeah.
I think of it like a movie. Actually, it's just I think it's kind of similar. It's almost like I put the DVD on that's like, you're terrible. You don't know what you're doing. You're a fraud. You're all this stuff. It especially gets to me with like my day job of teaching, which has gotten much better over the last few years as I've identified it, and I've got this like this way of thinking with the movie where I put on the movie of like how terrible I am, and then I just say I don't want to watch that movie right now, and take it out and like put something else. Like you said, what else do you got for me? Like, what else can we watch today?
Yeah.
I've seen this one before. It's really, it is so powerful. It's this self-talk. It sounds almost like silly and it's too simple to be true, but it really is, because you got swept away in it. Like it can just take you into like the deepest, darkest despair. And it is, sometimes it really is just a matter of like changing the words going on in your head.
Right. Yeah. I mean, luckily, just based on my history, me and my mom got in a really bad car accident when I was young, and it kind of freaked her out. So she had to get into therapy, and the therapist, I believe, wanted to prescribe drugs for her, I believe. And she was like, nope. And kind of got referred to more of a like healer. But this is like in a day, it's not as popular at this point as it is now. And yeah, she started meditating. So when I was 8, I was meditating and, doing guided meditation and using some of her strategies that are now in almost every self-help book. I also graduated with a psych degree, which I never used a degree, but I used the information. And what you just said about like putting the movie in, sometimes we're enveloped in the emotion, but all psychology basically teaches is step back from the emotion and look at it, observe it objectively, and say, oh, I'm bugging out, or no, I'm right for this, or whatever. One of the biggest examples, or the most frequent examples used about that kind of, I lost my train of thought. One of the biggest strategies used to kind of step back and observe things objectively is if you get cut off on a freeway. You get cut off on a freeway, and we immediately take it to offense. It's something that someone did to us. And really what psychology taught me was try to look at every scenario. Maybe that person is rushing because they have a sick person. They're rushing to the hospital. It just pulls you back from the emotion that you have. And yeah, what you did, putting the DVD, it takes you away from being enveloped in emotion. You can kind of look at it, and then you can even decide what emotion to have. Tony Robbins is one of the guys that I listen to that talk about these things. And he says that emotion comes from emotion. So the more you move, the more you feel. So once you get into a place of whatever, I'm trash, whatever, just move really weird, like in a way you never moved before, and something will happen. You'll be like, oh, that was awkward. And then you just knock the concept out of your mind. The same way with kids. If a 2-year-old is having a temper tantrum, one of the strategies is start making them count to 10, or say, what color is this? Because it deactivates the emotional center of the brain, and it just activates more of the presence center of the brain. I wish I remember the names, but we do the same tricks on ourselves. They all work. This is machinery we kind of know. So it's just about deactivating. Even if you're, a significant other, you're fighting, you step back and you look and you say, yeah, I'm wrong for what I just said. Now I see why she's responding to me this way. Now I get it. Let me come back and apologize. So, yeah.
I used to do it. I think I did this like in Little League as a kid, like shake it out, like just shake it, like literally just shake my body around and kind of like shake off those feelings.
Yeah.
Man, the car analogy is like so true, because I've seen the kindest, gentlest people become the most like insane lunatics when someone cuts them off in a car, and it's happened to me too.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things, like you said, like who knows what they're going through? Maybe there's something really serious they're going through, and even if they're just a jerk, do you really want to escalate and then potentially, instead of them just driving off into the distance, you might get involved with them further, and God forbid, like it came to something, you're getting out of the car, and I mean, now you're tied to this person even longer. Like,
Yeah.
let them get away. Let them
Yeah.
do their thing, and it's just so much better and healthier for you to do that, to let it go. But it's hard, and having that, I got a lot of this out of meditation myself too. So like this like moment where you do have a decision, you do have like this choice to react. I always think of from Hamlet by Shakespeare. There's this one part where Hamlet's friends are in Denmark. I think it's Denmark. Yeah, it's Denmark. And they're saying, "Oh, it's so beautiful here." And Hamlet, who just found out like his dad was killed by his uncle who married his mom, is not so happy. They're saying it's so beautiful, and he says, "There's neither good or bad in a thing, but thinking makes it so." So things are just things, and this is what you think about it makes it a good thing or a bad thing.
Absolutely. The meaning you assign to the emotion makes it either good or bad.
Yeah.
When a tiger kills a monkey or a gazelle or whatever, it is what it is, truly. If you show it from at either point of view, if you show from the monkey's point of view or whatever, then it's gonna seem like a tragedy. If you show it from the tiger's point of view, it's gonna seem like a victory because they haven't eaten. So
Survival,
it's just,
yeah.
I think the most consistent thing, whatever you believe, is perspective that exists. Gravity here on this planet is gravity here on this planet because of this planet. If you go somewhere else, it's different. You way different, So I think everything holds together via perspective, and yeah, agreed.
I hope that one day when I'm old and have a big white beard, I'll have the like power to only pick the perspective that serves me in a positive way, where I can say, oh, well, maybe if I look at it this way, I can be at peace with it and okay with it.
I think that's, man, I can really get deep on this, but I think the point of life is to have both of these perspectives. If you live in positivity forever, it's just you're not getting the gift. You no longer know what positivity is because you're in it, entirely in it. Oh man, I wish I remember the story, but there's a story of a light bulb that is amongst a lot of light bulbs, and this ominous voice, people are going to say it's God, but this ominous voice is speaking to the light bulb and says, "You're so bright." And the light bulb is like, "How can I tell I'm bright? Because I can't see myself. All I see is other light." But if you separate it and you put it in darkness, now it recognizes its gift. And that's when things go bad, or I label things as bad, I try to recognize that all of this is on purpose. I don't believe in fate, but all of this it's all part of it. I try to live my idea. Since you meditate, you might know what this is. Mandalas, the sand rugs that I believe Buddhists make. It's part of a prayer exercise.
Well, I don't know this. No.
I know they're called mandalas. That's all I know. But they have these multicolored grains of sand, and they move them by grain, and they make these beautiful, like, almost, it looks like tapestry rugs by just one grain of sand at a time, and then they destroy it. And all of it is part of life. The destroying is part of life. The building is part of life. But we usually hold on to one thing or another. And again, we lose track of where we're supposed to go. So like years ago, I stopped rushing. I realized that when I start rushing, everything goes wrong. So no matter, I don't care how big the opportunity, I start rushing, I start dropping my keys, I start forgetting this, I start forgetting, oh, I don't have my hard drive, whatever. It's just, or my power supply, which is the biggest deal. But I noticed I used to work retail, and I started just slowing down because I was like, oh, I'm going to get fired, whatever. And I remember that day, and I just accepted. I'm like, now I get to do music full time and all this stuff. And they never fired me. But I just remember that was when the concept kind of burrowed in of stop rushing, There's nothing, you could be saving yourself spiritually from some kind of tragedy by rushing to get the train, rushing to get in your car or your motorcycle, whatever. That's just something I've adapted to and taken on over the years. And like you said, with the beard, I plan to be Rick Rubin with a long gray beard at some point in the future. And I've only done it once, I feel like, but I think the mastery of perspective is to just tell someone you love them in their head. So if they're angry at you, but you have to not just, I love you, but just like, you just look through their eyes, look through everything and just tell them you love them. And I find that I'd done it once, it was definitely a test.
Out loud?
And what?
You mean?
Oh, no, in your head.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And it just washes everything, all the anger, all the tightness that you have, it washes over you because you see them as yourself. And one of my favorite books of all time called Conversations with God, sorry to get too spiritual, but it says that kind of like, why would you get mad at your own arm? That's kind of what we are, what we represent to each other. So, we're an extension of each other. And that's all I got for spiritual talk, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I think there could be a lot of truth to that. Where we're not so different, we're more connected, I think, than we realize. I've had definitely like run-ins at my job as a teacher, where once in a while, like a kid will tell you off, and there's often that like initial rush of like, oh yeah, like
I'm much bigger than you.
I'm bigger than you. I have the power here, whatever,
yeah.
But I've realized like it's not me, this isn't a personal thing. This isn't, and I'm really almost all the time, if I don't lose my cool, it eventually comes down, and it might not even be that day. It might be like a day or two later, but it's like, you can kind of, I know something else is going on here. It's not me. And I feel for them, like, I wonder like why, where are you today that, this is happening? It happened to me just a couple weeks ago. I was at school. We have to have the kids wear their ID cards, and it's a new thing. They don't want to do it. They picked out their outfits all morning, and they're looking fresh. And now you got to put this mismatching thing on,
right?
And I have to tell them to put it on. And the kid, ultimately called me an asshole, told me I was pathetic. A whole string of things, and I tried to keep that in my mind. Played it cool, and I had to get his name, and I went to the assistant principal, and she was on the phone with the kid's mom when I got there. So this dude was already in the middle of something, and I don't know, maybe he thought he was just gonna take the whole world down with him that day, like I'm screwed as it is, so and I felt for him, especially at that moment where I was like, this kid's got bigger problems than me. Like, whatever it is it's all coming down on him, And I did see him one time after that, and it was a friendly interaction, which was nice. It didn't bring it up or anything, but just, good morning, how are you, man?
Right.
Just, it's cool.
Yeah.
I don't care, but it's true. Like, when you can kind of see yourself in that. And I thought about like, man, if like I was in school and I knew like my folks are getting called by the disciplinarian of the school.
Yeah.
How would I handle that? Who am I to think I would be any better in that situation?
Yeah.
I might have been, you're an angsty kid, especially, and like you're almost looking for an excuse sometimes to just, you don't have a good way of dealing with like the frustrations and the anger. I think we're really lucky because we have something like we've got the music, and maybe you have other things in your life too that allow you to, release, get that stuff out. I mean, if you don't have that, what do you do? I know, like, I had temper tantrums when I was younger before I had that kind of something to, put it into.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I like that idea. That's like, to actually say that though, like, I love you, like in your head, to put that can really dissipate those feelings.
Yeah. And then like what you said, like even some of the things you were saying, like this kid has it rough, I can imagine that's taking the protective ego, guard that you have up, and it's actually surrounding them with it to help them. And that's the point, the concept. That's what I gather from saying I love you. Cause it's like, if your arm hurts, you don't curse it out. You just say, okay, what do you need? Instead of what I want to convey because I'm angry at you. What do you need? And even like, I believe that like, if you get into a fight with someone, no one ever wins. Like, even if you win the fight, I think a fight is a, tug of rope. Is that what it's called? Of energies.
Yeah.
Tug of war. That's what I was looking for. Being in a fight with someone is a tug of war. And if you win, you still have this disjointed kind of, darkened energy. But I think a good conversation, you actually volunteer your energy to that person. You actually enlighten them. You actually, imbue them with energy. And so I think when you say, I love you to another person, you're actually giving them energy, and you're healing them, and you're with your energy. But, it gets a little deeper. My mom, again, this is, when I was young, I used to come home from school. I'm like, so-and-so makes me mad. This person makes me mad. And my mom would be like, no one ever makes you mad. You turn it on yourself. And this is the beginning of every self-help book, and I'm learning this very young. So, shouts to the mom. But man, if I could put things into legislation, I would love meditation, psychology, and money management in every elementary school across America. I think, psychology and, a village has really helped me, because I go through everything everyone goes through. Just like when I talk to artists, I'm like, I've been through everything you went through. Every single frustration you're expressing is specific to your scenario, but it's the same frustration that every artist goes through. So the only difference is, there is no difference. It's just about having strategies to move through these frustrations. And if these kids have strategies, if they can recognize themselves, if they can get away from how they're feeling at the time and look at the scenario more objectively, it will help them a little bit better. If they can meditate and learn how to calm their mind a little bit. I don't meditate, but I know it's been proven without a shadow of a doubt to really help people. And then money management is a whole nother story. I think we're purposely not taught that, but those three things I just think would be we would raise just such enlightened children. And then critical thinking is key, which I think comes after all that stuff. I had teachers that would, I had one teacher, Mr. DeMille, that was fascinated with me. I think it was started with almost racial stuff, because I just moved to the suburbs. I've never really seen white people at this point. So I'm just dealing with this old white dude, and he's just like, you're pretty smart for a black kid. And he's like, I'm like, you're pretty cool for an old white guy. I saw different things on the TV. So we fell like in like with each other, off of racist and judgmental ideas. But he used to counsel me, and one of my favorite stories is he showed us this film, Mr. Bartleby, which is about, he showed us this film, Mr. Bartleby, and then asked us to write on this. This is 8th grade. And then we all wrote what we feel about it, handed it in, and he never never talked about it ever again. And we're all sitting there like, wait, why? We need to learn the answer. Tell us the answer. And I think that was the point. The point was to see how you feel and then move on. And so I think that's a huge thing that can also be taught in schools is critical thinking, which you would have to remove grades, which is fine as long as they know what they're doing. But anyway, you know more than I.
Well, no, I don't know about that. But yeah, that it's hard to think critically in the heat of the moment. You know, if you don't have a way to deal with your anger, frustration, or depression, or whatever emotion that is consuming you at the moment, you kind of need. We got to deal with that first, and I don't think that's really built into school. There's a push, though. I will say there is definitely there's more awareness about the mental health issues and more like compassion towards it, but it's not in the curriculum.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And it really should be. There should be a class like every year in health, say, but not just like, you know, they have health classes that's like one semester and it's like just health. Like that's why is that not a core? It doesn't make any sense, but there is a little hope, I guess. There's some of that coming in more and more.
Yeah.
I've seen it. But it's important. It's a lot of the lessons that I tell my classes are the most important thing I can teach you have nothing to do with words or language or books. It's like that's just details.
Yeah, when I was in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, I was in an advanced course, so we learned French early. We were like kind of separated. This is when I was living in the quote unquote hood, but yeah, I got a lot of advanced teaching, which you can't do nowadays, pretty much. But and part of sixth grade was to counsel younger students. So probably once a week, I had a kid that I would talk to, and because I was so sheltered away from what was going on in schools, I just had a different perspective. And so he's coming in rambunctious, yelling and loud, and I just remembered I always focused on his self appearance first. And unfortunately, it creates a standard that my standard is now the most important thing instead of his standard. However, he would just be yelling about anything, all these things, how he's frustrated. I'd be like, are your pants pulled up? And so again, this gets back to, I think, his frontal lobe situation where someone's having a conniption. You just make them focus on small details, which knocks them out of that. So later, you know, when he would walk in the room, he'd be like, "See, my pants are up. You see," and then he got that feedback and that praise from me. But yeah, I all these are common problems because kids become adults, and now these ideas are locked in. And let's not even talk about trauma, but you know, these concepts are locked in, and now you're just like you're dredging to get rid of some of these learned concepts. And if you think you can separate your life, your regular life, your personal life from your artistic life, it's all the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. So they're all gonna like weave and feed into one another. So it's a longer process, but we got to teach our kids to be a little bit more self-aware, a little bit more calm, a little bit more objective viewing, a little bit more teach them to be more critical in their thinking, and teach about money. And then everything else is like, 2 + 2 is 4. I don't know. Everything else is just additions. But if you create
content, it's not a foundational thing.
Yeah. So I'm all about that world. I have friends that a good friend of mine, she's trying to implement a program of yoga in the schools. And I know it's probably already in the schools, but she's implementing her own program and trying to find funding for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff too. I love yoga.
Me too.
It is funny that a lot of times this show, these conversations get into all this life stuff and, whatever it is we're talking about right now. Because it is, like you said, it comes through, like the issues we have in finishing a track, or even like there are like often like very deep rooted things going on. And it's one of the beauties really of exploring it through music. It almost becomes a metaphor for everything else. And when you get through these things, through the challenges of music, you kind of can see, oh, well, that kind of works here. That's this. And this is how I go through things. I get like this on other things too. And it's true. Like the fear, the insecurities, they don't just happen when I'm not making a good track. They happen when I'm not having a good conversation, or I feel awkward in some particular situation. That's very similar stuff coming up.
I think the solution personally is identifying intuition. Like, I think that's the solution, because we're so enveloped in what we've created as our ego and what we created, defined ourselves as. But I think intuition is just a deeper sense of things. And I've talked to a lot of friends about this. I serve as a counselor for a lot of friends and artists. And I always say that, because the biggest question is, how do you identify intuition? And my story is, years ago, music wasn't going too well. And I was like, I think I gotta get a real job. And found some marketing job. I used to live in New York. Found some BS marketing job, and I was talking to my mom, and I'm like, I'm going to apply to this, or I'm going to go to this interview because I've already gotten an interview, but I think it's BS. Like, I can feel it from here. And she's like, why would you go? And I was like, because I want to test if this sense is real, if this intuition is real, before it has happened, before it's just, let me see. And I mean, when I got to the interview, the guy was looking through me to the back of the wall, like he's given this same speech 10,000 times. And it was obviously some type of scamming of people. And I left with joy. And with music, I describe intuition as the first time you hear a song that you really love, like a song that you really love that turns off your critical ear, that's like, oh, I don't like how the hi-hat hits. It turns off. I think there's 3 levels of listening. There's just like the first level where it's just like everything is wrong. Your mix is wrong. You got everything panned to the left for some reason. Just everything is wrong. The fundamentals are wrong. And then the second level is everything is right. All the elements are in the right places, but I'm not getting a feeling and I don't know why. And then miles ahead is the third level, where you play it one time and you're crying or you're feeling emotion, and that's intuition. There's something about that connection. And I think, the fast track to getting over these childhood traumas and these things we learn is finding what your intuition is and trusting it. Because the more you trust it, the more you inform it, and it gets stronger and stronger. And I've been in Serbia where people try to rob me, and I'm like, and my intuition is just like, they're just like red flashing. I'm like, let me go just in case. And I just narrowly escape. And, but my intuition has already had just like this siren is
that was not an added effect, guys.
Yes, this is not, I do not have
the universe lining up.
Yeah, exactly. So I truly trust in it. And one of my favorite stories of identifying intuition and chills and goosebumps and all that stuff is during my demo phase, I call it. I was working with a bunch of artists, and I just didn't feel fulfilled. Every artist was like, oh, you do this. Cool. I'm going to pay you to do something I want you to do. And I'm like, I'm doing everything, every sound. And so I stripped away. I had 16, 18 artists at the time. I stripped away, got rid of all of them by saying, hey, release a project. And I think I had 2 people left. And so I just dived into things that I really loved. And one was a kind of an NERD project, like with a female singer and rockish elements. I didn't do much, but I enjoyed it. I was in joy. The second was Charlie Red, my group Charlie Red, and that became pretty successful for the time. A lot of syncs, a lot of things. And then the third was a classical hip hop project called Tri-State of Mind. And the first year made $12, and the following year it was in 5 commercials, major commercials, and made me more money than I made any time before that, probably even with Charlie Red. And what I recognize is the difference of how I felt while I was creating the music. Like, I noticed that I would be making things and it just would be like, that's good, right? Like, I just had this the music felt empty. I felt empty, but not in a good way. But that transition into these 3 projects was me shutting my blinds, like I said, listen to these songs, Rolling Stone, top 500 songs, all that stuff, and really identifying what gave me chills and goosebumps, just honing in on that. And then slowly but surely, when I started creating for the Charlie Red project and Tri-State of Mind, I was like, ooh, that's the feeling. That's the feeling I get with these other songs. So there should be some kind of connection. And so many things was happening with this project in the beginning that I said, let me test this concept out. And I wrote in order all the songs that we had, which was about 6, I believe, in order from the highest amount of chills and goosebumps to the lowest. And I was like, that's probably how the plays are going to be. And that's exactly what happened. The highest amount of chills got the most amount of plays. Once released, this is pre-release. And the lowest amount of chills got the lowest amount of plays. So every artist, no matter what level, I just say, hone in on intuition, identify what your intuition is, identify what gives you chills and goosebumps, play a lot. And it's going to be scary because now before you were looking for industry indicators, like, oh, since I have that sliding bass in my trap beat or whatever, that's good. That's what everyone's doing. So that is good. Then my track is good. But after this kind of process, you're going to be looking more for things that please you. And that's how we started in the first place. When we were playing, we weren't thinking of whether it's going to make some money or whatever, it's going to get playlisted. We were thinking about how it felt to us. And it's simple, but very difficult. And the last thing I'll say about it is when I signed a publishing deal in 2018 with Alex the Kid, and he's very rich, and all these concepts were kind of confirmed through working with these type of people. Like, when I went through like a month trial period with him where he flew me out to LA, and he was just trying to see if he wanted to sign me. And I just was like, I'm going to do whatever I think is right. So I fell out of the concept that I had. And I just remember there was like a pool, and I was just standing there, and I was like, I know I get this deal, because I wasn't performing right. I was like, I know I get this deal, but what do I do? What did I do to get the deal? Like, kind of speaking in the future, like going to the future and coming back to this moment and analyzing what I did to get the deal. And I was like, oh, I was myself. And so it was so, yeah, because he brought me there because I was being myself. All these other elements, same thing. When I worked with Dr. Dre, it was the same thing. He wears the same outfit every day. He wears black t-shirt, black jeans, white kicks. He's all about ideas. He's all about emotions. And that's what I felt. It was like, there's nothing I can say to him to impress him, or any of these guys. There's nothing I can say. So it's all about ideas, and ideas are fueled by enthusiasm. And enthusiasm probably comes from chills and goosebumps. So I say all to say, like, even the people that make the money kind of practice these concepts. I think the mid-level people, the people are like, oh, it's quarter 3 or 4 now, we need to make this, so make a song that sounds like Katy Perry mixed with, I can't believe I said Katy Perry, but like these two people mixed, and you're like, okay, I'll do this thing, okay, or go to Spotify and see what the top songs are and replicate that. That is not a good feeling to me. So anyway, I digress.
No, there's a lot of really good points there. I love what you said just about like, you're not going to impress them, you know?
Yeah.
What a relief, actually, when you come to that because that screws me up so much, honestly, when I'm trying to impress myself and people. I'm going to get these interesting chords in here. But when I go with my gut, when I trust the intuition, I don't even let myself think about that stuff. Sometimes those weird, impressive things just happen because I just found it. But a lot of times it's not. But what is impressive is like the vision of it. It might not be because it's in a weird time signature or, did something strange with a scale and modulated. It's because the overall thing had something. And that's like the intuitive thing you get with a song sometimes is you're playing it and you're like, all right, I got this. Once you get the sense of what it is and you can chase it, then it comes to life. And it kind of made me think a little bit about like, what we were kind of saying very early in this show with about like your samples, you're playing everything, the human feel. There's always something about those early takes, those early attempts that are all based on intuition, where you're kind of feeling it out, and then that interesting thing happens, and then everything after that is a little more calculated. And a lot of times you lose the vibe. It's like that demoitis thing where you get used to like, I love that spirit I had on that really crummy recording I made. And it's hard to capture that again. But to have that in mind, that like it's trust your intuition. I guess it's been said so many times.
Yeah.
It's just
I think it's for me, I'm sorry.
Again.
Yeah. For me, here's a great example. Sometimes we're playing a guitar lick and it's complex for some reason and we're missing it and the strings are farting or whatever. I tell people to play harder, not like try to get it, but to like your body needs to feel the emotion. So I think what attaches people, I mean, it's been said throughout this episode, but play it like how it feels. So if it's a crazy rock riff, then you need to stand up, put the strap on, not sit down, stand up, play the riff, move your body while you're playing it. So I used to be a basketball player, and I stopped playing a long time ago. But I did this drill, I don't know, let's call it 21. And I would shoot 21 jump shots from the free throw line. If I missed one, I only had one more to shoot. And if I missed that one, then I go back to 0. And all your whole ego and all your approach, your design of approach to everything comes out when you have that second shot. If you're at 20, especially, and you're like, I missed one. If I miss this one, I go back to 0. Then all the stuff comes out. And for me, it's either, I'm going to make this shot. My form is good. Or, I'm not going to make this shot. Ugh. And what I learned that works, and I use it when I'm creating, is just follow through. Shoot your shot. Like no thinking, actually, not like overthinking or underthinking, no thinking, muscle memory, just shoot the shot. And that's what I apply to when I'm playing that riff. It's just, once you start digging in and thinking about it, it's this, it's just sound, you might get it, but it sounds robotic because that's how you're feeling. But if you stand up, put your strap on, really play it, move like you're on stage. You might mess up. There might be farts, but they might be good farts. I don't know. That's what I find out. Like it's really good, and you feel the emotion because that's how I played it. So I think that's how you should approach your music. I make a distinction between playing music for people and sharing music. If you're insecure about your creativity in your music, you're looking for opinions. I see it as sharing. There was, during that whole swing I talked about earlier with Charlie Red, and it was more like sharing because I was like, what is this? I don't even know what's happening. Like I couldn't even claim that I made it. So it was more sharing. And now I just share music. I don't look for opinions. However, if there's something intuitive that I'm like, I don't like that snare, and then someone points it out, then that's something I need to work on. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, I'm just like, sometimes one of my strategies is I just I press play. I don't be like, hey, I'm going to share this song. It's not mixed. I don't even do that whole speech. I just press play. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I cut off people's conversation, just press play, and things will naturally happen. However, if you give people the speech, especially industry people, they'll just like, okay, let me turn on my critical ears. Let me turn on what it should be before you even played it. But I remember the first time I heard Retrograde by James Blake, I could not get through the song. I kept crying. Like 4 or 5 times I thought of my sister for some reason, and I just kept crying. And I'm like, this is what it's supposed to do. I'm not thinking about which plugin he used for the piano. I'm not thinking of that. And that's the high level. That's the third level. That might not happen to everybody, but I think, Quincy Jones says, if you feel it when you made it, it's more than likely that other people feel it too.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, like you said, when you tell people it's incomplete or something's funny, they listen for that. But it's all subjective. Is it a good mix? How loud should the vocals be? There's not a rule. And as soon as you say that, then they start thinking, just take it for what it is.
I had a A&R tell me, like, imagine if you made a song you don't like and now you have to perform it for the rest of your life. And I was like, well, yeah, true. I want to think of when I'm 80 and I'm sitting at the bar with the long gray beers, like we said, and I'm telling the story, my story. No matter what the outcome, I want to say that I did what felt right. Even if it's a great outcome or not so great outcome, I want to say that this felt really good and I'm really proud of what I've done. And the outcome is not important. It's really that feeling to me. And I'm saying a lot, but the most fantastic, I think it's like the second most watched TED Talk. It's by Elizabeth Gilbert. I believe it's called Finding Your Elusive Creative Genius, off the top of my head. Very easy to find. And she is talking about her struggles after writing Eat, Pray, Love, which was a super popular book. And I'll just start. I won't tell you everything, but she starts to get into the concept of why did some painters cut their ear off? Why did some people say, she said one author said that every work killed them more and more. Every work they released killed them more and more. I'm like, how can you have that attachment to a work? And that's what she thought. And she was like, there has to be some way I can detach myself from my work. And she said she looked up ancient Greeks and Romans, I believe, and found out that they believed that the genius lived in the walls. Now we call people geniuses. And so they attach themselves to the work that they created. But if you separate and you believe that there's some kind of genius that you're operating in tandem with, then if you make crappy work, you don't have to be so sad because your genius wasn't, present. the genius didn't show up that day. And then also when you make great work and people are praising you, you don't have the pressure of making the next work. And that's exactly why she did this TED Talk. It's an amazing TED Talk. It's everything I'm saying. Like I was leaning into this kind of mentality, and then this TED Talk found me, and I'm like, this is how I'm thinking. Like, I'm just thinking, I don't call any artist a genius anymore. I just think that there is a genius that we all can tap into, but we have to remove our ego, remove those blockers, and tap into that intuition, and then that genius hopefully will show up. I think we don't have control. It's not just because you remove your ego and all your blockers and your trauma away. Okay, now I'm ready for the genius. The genius shows up. It has its own time. It has its own things to do. But it just removes the pressure of having to create great work. If you don't feel it, you don't feel it. But you have to identify whether your genius is lame or your ego is in the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we're running near our end.
Oh man,
you made it. I'm so bad at keeping people too long. You're interesting though.
Appreciate it.
Did you watch the Beatles Get Back documentary at all?
No, I've been meaning to. Short plug: my lawyer was nominated for an Emmy because he worked on the genius the Kanye documentary. So I asked him.
I didn't see that yet. I got to see that too.
Oh my God, it's great. It's like it's so great. The first one, the third one gets into what I try to explain to people. Like, this is what it looks like when you're a star. Now everyone likes everything you do.
I saw that. What am I talking about? I watched that whole
Yeah.
thing. It was
Okay,
great.
okay, good,
I
good,
just
good.
like it all came back to me, you know?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, it's the same example, right? Like you watch him, like, and what he produces is amazing. It's the same thing with the Beatles. What they produce is amazing, but they work. They're showing up. And you see like Paul McCartney in the Let It Be documentary. He's fussing around with like what we know is going to become Get Back. And you know, he's getting there. He's getting close. And he's not saying he's not one of the most talented musicians you could ever watch.
Yeah.
But you watch him struggle through it and you watch him work through it and figure it out. And he's like, it's like he's tapping into it. And
yeah,
it's as amazing as it is, it's kind of blood, sweat, and tears at the same time. And it's the same thing with Kanye and his work, where he is pulling out amazing stuff, but it's not because it just happens to him.
Yeah, it's not like everything he does is genius, or like he's tapping into that genius every time. It's we talk about the 100,000 hours. I think the 100,000 hours is to get the skill to interpret the idea. So when you're given the idea from the genius, now you have that 100,000 hours of like, oh, I'll go to this, because everyone knows that feeling when the genius arrives. Every plugin you choose is perfect. Every guitar riff you play is perfect. Every bass, every piano lick is perfect. You know that. But when it's not there, you're struggling. Like, I don't know, maybe A minor to like you're thinking. You're using the 100,000 hours. You're using the skill, but there's nothing fueling the skill. There's There's nothing underneath it, providing that je ne sais quoi, the energy, the spirit, the whatever. But once you're filled with it, when I know it's there, when I can feel it and I get those chills, I thank it. I say, thank you for being here. Because I know everything I do from now until it goes away is going to be great. So I just say, thank you for being here. And I get chills when I thank it. Then I'm getting chills as I'm saying this. Then I move forward through it, and then it eventually fades out. And I say, I'm appreciative for it being there. So like, yeah, it is blood, sweat, and tears, but people tend to say, I see a lot of people's bios and they're like, I've been doing this for 35 years and it doesn't mean you're good. Time doesn't necessarily mean greatness. Again, I keep saying it. There's some people that are prodigies that never do anything. And there's some people that have done it for many years and haven't done anything as well. It's not time. It's separation from what ego and all this stuff. That's truly how I feel. And then belief. That's a whole nother story, but it's definitely belief when it's not in front of you at the time. So,
yeah, right on. I hear that, and I've known that feeling at the very beginner stage when like something cool happens, like, oh, what is this?
Yeah,
and then more experience where it's like, ooh, it's like you got the fish on the line or something.
Yeah,
and, it's there. And it is magical. It is. And I like to believe that too, because like you said, it does sort of take you off the hook a little bit. And it also keeps you from being like, I'm the greatest. Look at me.
Yeah.
Because I've had those thoughts. Like there have been times when I felt really empowered, like especially when I was learning how to use like Ableton Live for my performances. I started to feel like I can do anything I want. Like this, learning the new software, and it was just all these new tricks. I was like, this is awesome. I feel like a wizard. And then the next time I go and do it, I come up with nothing. It's going to knock you on your ass immediately if you get that way. And that can be really devastating, but, trusting it and believing it and respecting it, when it does show up is all a big part of it.
My mom used to say, we watched the Michael Jackson Budapest performance, which is one of the best ever. And we would talk about energy flowing and all this stuff. Yeah, we're weird sometimes. And I'm like, why all these people are passing out is because he's he's completely, as the spiritual people say, anointed. He's completely connected to energy at this point. So he's being filled with this like beautiful energy. And then, just like I said earlier, when you have a great conversation, someone volunteers their energy, and then he has 30, 50,000 people volunteering their energy. So he's just like Goku at this point, and he's just throwing it out to the crowd. And so they're passing out because it's so beautiful. Yeah. So that's like, I remember me and my mom were watching Young Michael. This is when he died. So, everyone was all over YouTube. And so we're watching Young Michael and just like, why did we allow like a 7, 8-year-old to sing love songs to us? This person doesn't know anything about love. But and my mom was like pointing at him, he was moving. She's like, oh yeah, that's all spirit there. That's all universe. And walked away. And I was like, I think it is. Like he's filled. It's not. He's just way too tapped in at that age. So anyway, I think that's the key. And I think if you approach every aspect of life coming from intuition, it makes it a lot easier. Does everyone do it? Do I do it? Absolutely not. Like I said, I did the I love you thing one time in my life. One time. I'm still work, but I know because of how I felt and how it changed this person instantly, from yelling at me to like, I want to, I was working retail at the time. I want to talk to your manager. You're amazing. Like instantly, like something happened. So I think intuition is the key. And it's like, it also helps you with creativity, but it also helps you with interpersonal relationships, because you realize that we are all one. That's why music connects us. That's why art connects us. That's why you see a great dancer. You can see, there's something about them is special. You just know. And it's not them. It's just something special filled them for a moment. And Elizabeth Gilbert, we're just going to use an example for that at the end. But anyway, everyone, you got to listen to that podcast, or not a podcast, listen to that TED Talk, because it's amazing and it's super inspiring. And again, this is the biggest woe I hear from artists, is just like, I'm trying. It's not happening. I'm like, do you like what you're making? Do you like it? Do you enjoy it? Would you listen to it? And not because of the things in it, not because of the sounds, but how does it feel when you listen to it? There's a reason why you put on whoever, Coldplay, Radiohead, whoever you listen to for certain moments. There's an attachment in your life, but there's also a feeling attached to it. Do you create feeling with your work? If you don't create feeling, then identify what made you feel and just listen to that stuff. Make a playlist of stuff that made you feel good. I have a playlist. It's called Genius Playlist, and it's all the songs that give me chills. So just like I do with videos and stuff like that, I listen to my Genius Playlist when I need to get there. And sometimes it's to make a song. Sometimes it's just to feel good, because I know every single song back to back is going to give me chills. And I think when you feel chills, you don't need anything. There's nothing you require. It's like, it's gratitude.
That's an amazing phenomenon. Like, we get a physical reaction on our body.
Yeah.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
Something there. So let me ask you a little bit. I think, listen, if you're enjoying this conversation, listeners, I really do believe like a lot of this philosophy and these beliefs you have come through in what you're producing and the samples and stuff.
Thank you.
You like to send people to brandedsoundaudio.com? Branded Sound Audio?
Yeah, that's my sample, where all my sample packs and samples are. You can also go to CobaineIvory.com, either or. It all leads to one or the other. And then look out for Composing Sample and Loops. That's coming out pretty soon. And it's a class where I teach people how to make their own samples and loops, and some of the philosophies I utilize to create my samples. And then maybe a little bit of music. I was going to say music therapy. Maybe a little bit of what was I going to say? Maybe that's what I was looking for. Maybe a little bit of music theory. in the class that will help you. The way I learned, which is through that book, Theory and Harmony. But yeah, everything is at CobaineIvory.com if you want to make it easier.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna check out that course. It sounds like it's gonna be pretty cool, and I would definitely enjoy like learning about your process. You got like cool stuff, like you got stuff going on to reel-to-reels and the broken piano, and like I'm so into that. That's character, that's stuff that has that personality, and sometimes that's what gives you the chill it's the collection of just these elements that are real and like lived in, and that's coming through to me in your work, and that's something.
Thank you.
When we first connected, I was like, yeah, this is cool. I want to find out more about this.
Thank you. Yeah, it's that's the biggest compliment, is that if you can feel what I'm about in my music, that truly is like, it's not like, wow, this snare is great. I always say snare, I don't know why, but it's not about that. It's just like, one of my favorite stories, there's a song called Lambo I did for this artist named Luke James, and I would text him once a week before it came out. I'm like, man, this thing has something in it. It's special. My current girlfriend, I was listening before she and I were together, I was listening to this song to get over it, and I was part in creating it. So there's something special about it. It's like unrequited love. There's something special. And I remember playing it for a good friend of mine, and it was one of the first people I shared it to. I shared the song with, and outside of the people who worked on it, and she couldn't stop crying, and I was like, wait, what's going on? Like, tell me what you're hearing. What are you feeling right now? And she couldn't even gather herself to tell me about what she was feeling. She ended up just saying she's proud, but I think it was something. It was triggering something, and that's the goal, because when I made the beat, I wasn't feeling it. I loved it. I got the chills, but when I got the song back, I was like, I feel it. And then when Luke told me what it's about, I was like, it's in there. It's totally in there, and people are going to feel it. This is special. And now, like, I can search, every once in a while, I'll search what people are talking about on Twitter or something about Lambo. And it's just everyone's saying, if you want to float to the sky, and it's everything. And that's the biggest compliment for me, is for you to identify what I'm feeling from a distance through music. That means that my intuition is kind of in tune, kind of. And I'm still working on tuning it. But that, if you're like, oh, I was singing, this song is about, I don't know, doing jumping jacks. And you're like, no, I felt like this was like totally different emotions, then something's off there. But consistently with that song, my Charlie Red stuff, people report the same feelings that I was feeling, and the same stories that the writer was writing about. It's just, and that is like beyond the biggest compliment for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's a great accomplishment, even if like it was just that one person,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's really cool. I love it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Sharing,
you,
being
Appreciate
so
it.
open about everything. Really great conversation. I think everyone listening would agree.
Yeah.
So,
thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to talk to you finally. Appreciate it.
yeah, excellent. So we'll send people to CobaineIvory.com or BrandedSoundAudio.com. It does sort of circle back. I found my way around, which is cool, which is nice. You make it easy for people to find out what you're all about is always a good idea.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
And we'll be on the lookout for the course, and I guess down the road, a book as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, and thank you for listening. Have a great day.